Very good evening. Today we'll be talking about how you solve a case study, considering that if you look at the MBA scheme of examination, a case study commands a marks weightage of nearly 15 marks. So going about doing a case study in an effective and efficient manner thus becomes very crucial in order to stand at a much better ranking or at a much better scenario compared to the rest of your peers. So what is a case study? Very simple. This is going to be a description of an actual administrative or maybe even a business decision. You need to give your decision stepping in the shoes of that business person in order to solve a problem or in order to take the right decision. So there are certain kinds of case studies. First one being an illustrative case study, where you're illustrating a certain event or a situation. Then there are exploratory case studies, which is done for large investigations. Cumulative case studies, similar business situation from several different sites at different time windows. Then there is a critical instance case study. So considering postgraduate and MBA standpoint, you're very likely to look at or come across either point number one or rarely point number four. So this first and most important step in your case study analysis, or what we call the short cycle process, is you need to quickly read the case, and you can read only the first few and the last few paragraphs. Mind you, there is a caveat to it. There is a bit of a warning to it, which I'll tell you shortly. In the short cycle process, you need to figure out these specific points. Who is the key decision maker in the case? What is his or her position and responsibilities? What appears to be the key issue? What is its significance for the organization? What is the reason for the issue to have arisen, and what is the role of the decision maker? And what is the level of urgency? So in the short cycle process, you have to give a sincere look at the exhibits, key facts and figures and charts. You need to review the case main titles and the subtitles to see the areas which are covered. Then you read the case questions, which may give you clues about the issues. So when you are starved for time, God forbid time management doesn't go as you planned it, but you do not want to miss out on 15 marks, the short cycle process is very efficient. But the caveat here is you're only reading the first few and the last paragraphs. So sometimes there is a possibility that you don't figure out some key issues. There is a concern that you've not looked at some exhibits and you tend to skip them due to the paucity of time. So the short cycle process, though extremely efficient, should be handled very delicately, because you'll end up making more errors than you started off if you're not careful and diligent in this. The long cycle process, on the other hand, is quite traditional because you're reading the case in a detailed manner and you're analyzing it. So compared to the short cycle process, you're not going to skip out on too many elements here because you're reading it in detail and you're analyzing it. Mind you, short cycle, where time is short, you do not want to miss out on the case study and you want to give it an honest attempt. Long cycle, when you have carefully allocated time for your case study and you want to give it your 100%, long cycle makes sense. When either the short cycle or the long cycle process, you need to look at and you need to read information like the stating paragraph, specific background information, information from a functional area of interest, the specific problem, what are the alternatives you can suggest, and ultimately the conclusion. So in the case analysis, always define the issue, look at what is the problem. How do you know it's a problem? Because a problem by itself is going to be very different from a normal situation. Look at issues which need to be addressed immediately. Distinguish important issues from urgent issues. See, you need to start ranking the issues from maybe 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. Only the issues which are top 2 or top 3 need to take your attention. The other two issues may be important but not so urgent. So mind you, importance, urgency. Some issues are important but not urgent. Some issues are urgent but not important. You need to strike a quick balance of being both important and urgent so that you're able to do a diligent case analysis. You need to find the reason behind the issue, do a cause and effect analysis. Look at resources, look at people, look at processes, look at financial data, marketing data, human resource based data. Identify what are the specific functional areas of people who are affected by these issues. Look at limitations and opportunities. Always, mind you, always be very careful of this part. Make sure you don't miss out on analyzing the numbers. Since a case study, considering an MBA standpoint, tends to also be analytical, not just qualitative, but sometimes quantitative as well, the only way you can arrive at a just conclusion is by analyzing the numbers. Then, once you've done this, you need to generate certain alternatives. While you're doing that, be extremely practical. Let the alternative be one which is implementable and actionable. Do not give a decision which requires further investigation because you don't have time. Avoid doing nothing. And most importantly, you need to avoid this thing called the meat sandwich approach, which means you take two alternatives which are undesirable, stick them together. So thereby what happens is two alternatives are nonsensical. The one alternative which remains looks much more reasonable compared to the other two, and you tend to implement them. Whenever you are deciding upon implementing something, look at the obstacles present. Because see, it's not just about implementing the decision, it's about implementing the right decision. So there are some key decision criteria which you need to consider. One, mostly you would see in MBA based case studies, it looks at improving or maintaining profitability, increasing sales, enhancing market share, improving return on investment, maintaining customer satisfaction, improving the corporate image. It looks at maintaining employee morale, employee safety, reducing employee turnover, minimizing environmental impact. These are called KDCs or key decision criteria. So what you need to do is while you are trying to implement alternatives, keep alternative A, alternative B, and look at how these things fit into the context of your KDCs. Always look at the problem, look at your alternative, and see if they match. Because a problem with a poor alternative leads to an implausible solution. A problem with an infeasible alternative leads to a solution which may never take place. So while you're evaluating alternatives, always use the ranking method as I told you. Do a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 4 rank. Only consider the top 2 or the top 3, not more than that. Evaluate the pros and cons of your alternatives. Fine. And you look at the star here, please. I'm going to quickly highlight this for you. Always consider the long and short term effect of the alternatives chosen. Because whatever you are implementing should be sustainable and feasible, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. So in order to conclude, what you need to understand is you got to put yourself in the shoes of a business person because these people are decision makers. So a case study is an opportunity for you to practice your decision making. Whenever you give a decision, have a justification for it. The key decision criteria or the KDCs are going to be your ally in this regard. Check to make sure that your alternatives resolve what you define as the problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep this crisp 10-minute video always by your side because it gives you an insight in a short and concise manner as to how you need to solve a case study intelligently, keeping time as a constraint, keeping your mental state in the exam as a constraint, keeping your efficiency and effectiveness in the exam as your constraints. Thank you so much.